Yeah, I was going through some of the stuff, resawing some of the defects out of it, and went over your DVD of the bandsaw.
Right,
What
right.
a help that was. And my saw needs some help, man. Would you help me out?
Of course I will.
Yeah, it's a good saw, but it's not working like it needs a tune-up.
Okay.
Let's check it out. So
Sure. So Russ, what are you primarily using this bandsaw for? I mean, specifically, would it be resawing?
Yeah, we're resawing highly figured guitar billets for lamb tops on guitars. And so it's real important to get a real clean book match.
Right.
And we're doing a good job, but I know with some of your expertise and knowledge on these saws, I could get a better job done. And I'd like to ask you what I'm doing wrong, or how can I make that resaw tighter?
Sure. Well, for example, like with most guitar sets, you're going to be, I'm assuming that you're going to be opening this up to maybe about 8 or 9 inches.
Yeah.
And so what you want to do is basically put a taller fence on this. What I like to do is put more height on the fence. And also, I like to be able to clamp it down on the outside as well. Because once you get that fence set up, once you get that dialed in, you want to be able to just feed that stock through there and get consistent cuts. And what we're shooting for is to get the cuts so that they're from top to bottom pretty much within plus or minus 0.010 of an inch, so that the thickness is uniform. That way you're getting the cleanest cut off the bandsaw, and then minimizing the amount of sanding you got to do afterwards. So what I've done is I've made auxiliary fences out of plywood. You know, a good quality plywood like a Baltic birch plywood or an apple plywood. And on my 36-inch bandsaw, I made a torsion box fence. So the fence itself is 15 inches tall, and it's very, very stiff and rigid. Are you familiar with that principle of a torsion box?
No, I'm not.
Think airplane wings. So if you have a grid work pattern in an airplane wing, and that's covered over with a skin on the top and a skin on the bottom, it acts like an I-beam. So it's not gonna bend, it's not gonna twist, it's not gonna bow or warp, and something like that would be a good way to go in a fence. Agazani bandsaw, a really nice machine here. Looks like you've got a Lennox, is that a TriMaster carbide tip blade?
Yeah, it's a thin curve.
Yeah, those are really sweet.
Probably makes a huge difference, but
probably one of the biggest things is your guides. Because very typical, say with the Agazani and the Minimax bandsaws, is they have this European guide system, which it's really difficult to snug those up on the blade.
And it makes a terrible sound too.
I'll bet. You know what I did with my saw? Is Laguna sells their ceramic guides. And the ceramic guides have a contact point here, and here it's kind of like a U shape. And I installed those on the top and the bottom, and it really works nice. Because right now you got some blade movement. See that? It's just moving back left to right. But and these European guides, they're just not really well designed for snugging up that blade and getting good blade contact. So I think you're probably in.
Could I put those on this saw?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's what I did with mine. The kit was, I don't know, $200 or $300. I can't remember, but it was pretty easy to install. There's a couple of screws. These old ones came off. The new post fit right into where that old post is, and it's a really sweet setup. I'm sure you'll have it dialed in within about an hour, and should be good to go after that. You could even, here's another option: is I've taken 3/4 inch fin ply, glued 2 of those together to get a fence that's 1.5 inches thick, and then screwed or bolted that onto the existing fence, and then that way you've got a plywood fence that's longer. It's running the length of the saw, and you can hook up a clamp on the backside and clamp it down on the backside.
But what good? Why not only 3/4? Why did you use double that?
You're working with some big billets of wood, aren't you?
Yeah, well,
you put a
2-3 inches thick by 20 inches, 24 inches long.
Right. Well, there's some weight there, And you know, I mean, this fence, I know it's not clamped down, but if you, well, I guess it is clamped down there.
You can do it.
But if you can get some movement, you know, you just don't want to be able to bump that fence.
I see.
You want to get that thing as rigid as possible. And also with the carbide blade you're using, you're not probably going to have any drift problems. Typically drift is a result of the carbon steel blades, and they're usually sharper on the left or sharper on the right, which translates into drift problems. But with the carbide tip blades, those are milled just like a table saw blade, so they're going to cut nice and straight for you. But I think your main concern is probably beefing up the fence, and then also using some feather boards. So some feather boards are going to apply pressure up to the fence. That way everything is just pretty much held in a channel, and as you slice forward, there's no place for that wood to go. You know, it's just going to be trapped between the fence and the feather boards, and basically you just become the, you know, the automatic feeder, pushing it through the blade.
You know, sometimes I'm doing that and I'm feeding a piece of wood through and I'm trying to let the saw do the work and just pushing it relatively slowly. And every now and then I'll hit a pocket of the wood, or maybe it's in the saw, but it'll just, it'll just want to just race through. What's that from? Is it the wood or the saw blade?
That's an excellent question. I mean, weird stuff goes on with wood and tools, and I'm guessing there's different densities in there, sometimes different moisture levels.
Within the same piece of wood?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's predominant, just, you know, it'll just want to race right through like you're cutting through butter. And then it'll stop and it'll be that same tension again.
Well, if you think about the winter growth, which is slower and more denser, and then the summer growth, which is much more rapid and translates into softer wood. Let's say the blade is hitting some of that summer growth, maybe the grains are starting to run out, and suddenly it's hitting a band of that summer growth, which is softer, boom, it's going to lunge forward. And then that's why I like having a good strong fence and feather boards, because it gives you a safety factor, you know. I mean, it's dangerous stuff.
So you're saying it's the wood?
I think it's the wood. I think it's the wood. Who knows? Maybe a bunch of fibers got ganged up on the blades. And
you run into that then as well.
Oh yeah. It's there's weird stuff that happens. There's this thing called harmonic vibration, and sometimes the blade will start, you know, going like that. So sometimes if you go a little bit slower or a little bit faster, you know, you adjust your feed rate and it smooths out.
Goes away.
Yeah.
Good to know. That sure helped.
Well, as you know from looking at the DVD, there is a ton of little nuances to bandsaws. And I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. You know, things like eliminating vibration in the saw, you know, working on the tires on the machines themselves. You know, a lot of guys don't always want to invest the time to work on something like that, but all these little nuances add up. And I've gone through my bandsaws, and I'm doing a lot of resawing as well. And I find it's definitely worth the effort. You know, reducing the vibration, you know, working on the fence, tuning up the wheels, checking the tires, making sure that those are in good shape. Sometimes those have to be replaced. And the guides are really important. You know, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. You know, what I have told people on my DVD, it's like buying a hand plane. You know, when you buy a hand plane, it's not necessarily flat on the sole and sharp right out of the box. So sometimes you got to do some tune-ups to it. And it's the same thing with power tools and hand tools. You know, everybody needs a little tune-up once in a while.